Well, let's get started. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first. Sorry, my picture is so very dark right now, but there you go. But my background is quite bright. I'm joining you from California, so it is 5:35 in the afternoon. That's part of the reason why it's so bright. But here we are. Yeah, joining for you from Sonoma. I'm just outside of Santa Rosa, just south of Windsor. Out here with my family. So you may hear some kid noises in the background. You may hear my or see my niece pop up on the screen in a little bit, but you know, we'll make it happen. Um anyways, there is no one new this month. There are a few folks that have not joined us for a few years that came and joined us already, uh, but they're joining back up this month. But we don't have anybody new on the club, so I will skip the whole name pronunciation and ground rules and all of that, and we can even go straight into tasting through the grid with each one of you taking the section like we always do, just because everybody on here this month is already familiar with our process. So there's that. But I do have an announcement, which is Case Club goes live tomorrow. So those are all the Campania wines. So all the Campania wines. I do have a Terrassi coming on there. All the last four wines of the Boge box, for those of you who joined Boge box, as well as Elisa Guerin Beaujolais Village that was out of stock when it was featured on Boge box is back in stock. So I'll feature that here as well. You guys should definitely pick that up because the wine is delicious. But so yeah, some Bosch stuff, some other one-off things, and then all the Campania wines from last month will be on Case Club tomorrow, going out tomorrow. So keep your eye out for that. Besides that, no one really. Oh, for those of you who attended Wine Prom, what a great time! I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. The pictures from that just got sent to me today. So I will put them into a Google Drive and send it all out to you guys. So you can look, there's some good ones in there. And then if you have any pictures, I ask that you load them onto that Google Drive so we can all have this shared folder of a communal album of our debauchery, which is always fun thing. So
A lot of fun,
there's that.
man. Put it together.
A lot of fun. Yeah, I'm glad you came back. Great. Um, all right. Any questions about any of that before we move on to the wine? Also, last but not least, 6 Foot Wine Club is committed to donating 1% of its gross revenue to an organization whose mission statement aligns with its values. And this month, we are donating to Meals on Wheels. Classic. It's been around for a while. If you want to learn more about what they do, or you want to donate alongside 6 Foot Wine Club, the donation link as well as their website is right there in the chat box. Go check them out. So yeah, any questions? Cool. All right. Hearing no other questions, let's move on to the wine. We're tasting this guy today. This is a little fat bottom girl over here. 2017 Cantina della Volta, Rosato, Brut, Metodo, Classico, Lambrusco di Sorbara is what we're tasting today. That's a lot of words that I just spoke, but all that information is the back label as well. But yeah, that's what we got. So, and Chris just mentioned this, but for those of you who've been around for a while, you may recognize this producer's name. But Cantina della Volta is the same producer that I featured. Was that 2 years ago, year and a half ago? It was for a Thanksgiving box. It was that Blanc de Blanc, the white Lambrusco that came in, that red cellophane kind of a wrapping. It looked like it came out already ready to party. So yeah, it was that perennial favorite. Everybody's been asking if they can get their hands on it more. It's the same producer that we're having, but we are tasting their Rosato this time instead of their Blanc de Blanc. So it's basically what we got. Right, let's map. Start with a map. Where are we? There you go. Here's a map of Italy. And this month, we're spending the entire month. This is a Lambrusco box. But we are really spending all of our time in Emilia-Romagna. Emilia-Romagna obviously is the place for Lambrusco. When you think of Lambrusco, you think of Emilia-Romagna. When you think of Emilia-Romagna, you think of Lambrusco. However, Lambrusco is not only limited to Emilia-Romagna. In fact, there's a little bit of it being made in its neighboring regions like Lombardy. There's some of Lambrusco being made here. So it's more about kind of the usage of the Lambrusco varieties, which we'll talk about, but there are about like 6 different sub varieties of Lambrusco varieties. This one today happens to be made from a variety called Lambrusco di Sorbara, which is written in the back label. If you want to look, right underneath Cantina della Volta, it says Lambrusco di Sorbara. That's the name of the variety of the wine. Oftentimes, that is a limit of what a Lambrusco needs to be, and obviously it needs to be sparkling. But outside of that, it's pretty lenient when it comes down to where it comes from, in terms of how it's made. Shannon made a comment earlier, but oftentimes it is red, but it can be rosé, like we see. Sometimes it can be white, like we saw like a year and a half ago. So though in general, you should assume if you hear the word Lambrusco, that's going to be a sparkling red. However, it's not always the case. And in general, you should assume that it probably comes from Emilia-Romagna. Chances are it comes from Emilia-Romagna, but it's not always the case. It could come from Lombardy. I do believe there's a little bit of being made in this western side of Tuscany as well. But really, when we're talking about Lambrusco, we're talking Emilia-Romagna. I have initially considered putting together more of an Emilia-Romagna box to showcase some of the other still wines that are being made here. But to tell you the truth, I did not come across any still wines that I really, there was anything to write home about. It was really all the Lambruscos that really spoke to me. So I figured, why not? Let's just make it a Lambrusco box. So even though we're calling this an Emilia-Romagna box, really it's a Lambrusco box. It's basically what we're calling it a Lambrusco box. We're really talking about Lambrusco from Emilia-Romagna. It's basically what we're talking about here. So as you can see on this map, we're kind of in the north central part of Italy. All right. If I pull back further, this is where Emilia-Romagna is. We've been in Friuli, we've been in Trento Alto Adige. We featured a lot of wines from Metodo before, but it's basically south of the most northern part of Italy. So in this kind of like a peach color region, and it's quite big, as you can see. It almost expands pretty much the entire width of Italy in the northern side of Italy. It's really without this Liguria, which is only about like 90 miles wide, probably if even that, maybe 75 miles wide. Without that, you're essentially seeing a region that spans west to east coast. It spans both the west and the east coast of Italy. You may recognize some of these names, like Bologna, obviously. It is the capital of Emilia-Romagna region. Modena, this is where the once the #1 restaurant in the world by San Pellegrino, the Francescana, the Italian restaurant, is in Modena, and Parma, obviously. But as some of these names may remind you, what Emilia-Romagna is really known for is their food. It's basically all the delicious things that we think of when we think of Italian cuisine pretty much comes from right here in Emilia-Romagna. So we're talking about home of Parmigiano Reggiano, the greatest cheese, arguably the greatest cheese on earth, comes from Parma. Prosciutto di Parma, right, comes from Parma. Balsamic vinegar, Modena, is the capital of balsamic vinegar in the world. Tortellini comes from Bologna. Bolognese sauce, Bolognese literally means of Bologna or comes from Bologna. The beloved tomato-based meat sauce that we associate with the Italian cuisine, that is essentially comes from here, right in Bologna. So all the delicious things come from right here. However, having said that, the region's wines are much less remarkable. The region does have 2 DOCGs, but they're really, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's nothing more than a political move. It's the reason why how they got their DOCG status is probably through bribe and politics. And if they're actual purist Italians on this call from Emilia-Romagna, I'll probably get a lot of shit for saying that, but it really is true. Because the both wines that come from here really is not all that great or all that remarkable. So one of them is Romagna Albana. That's the one DOCG that comes from here. It was promoted in 1987. It's a white wine made from the local grape called Albana. Um, it's oftentimes very neutral, just white, doesn't age all that well, oxidizes quite easily. Probably the most promising version of Romagna Albana is their Pasito style wine, which is the sweet kind of a dessert style wine that's made from by raisioning the grapes first before fermenting it. So there's that. So I'm telling you this so in case you do want to explore a little bit more of things outside of Emilia Romagna, not just Lambrusco, there are these things that exist. But the second DOCG is Colli Bolognese Pignoletto. It's awarded in 2011. It's a very tart, dry, varietal white wine, also made from a Crocchetto grape. We talked about a little bit of Crocchetto grape last month when we were talking about Campania, talking about Greco, all these names of grape varieties that sound like they're from Greece, Greco, Crocchetto, but really a lot of it is not. They're not from Greece. It's just that people thought that they resemble the wines from Greece, so they just named the grapes that way. But yeah, varietal Crocchetto grape that's made here, Colli Bolognese Pignoletto. Pignoletto is a local dialect for Crocchetto. So there's another DOCG. If you want to go try it, if you want to go to if you go to any Italian wine shop that features Lambrusco and Emilia Romagna wines, they'll probably have it. Go check it out, but be warned, in my opinion, they're nothing to write a poem about. A lot of very much of a political move to get them included into DOCG. And evidenced by other DOCs in the region, only 15% of the region output is a DOC level. So there's not a whole lot of basically emphasis on quote unquote quality, or at least getting them ranked into the appellation level wines. So most of the wines come here are basically quantity driven, mass driven kind of a wine style. But in the central province of Modena and Reggio, so right around basically around this region, and actually going north, is where we're going to be. This whole region with the one particular wine style that dominates everything else is Lambrusco. That's exactly what we are featuring today. And you may hear the name Emilia Romagna, and you may be thinking, is there some sort of history there? Why is it two different names, the hyphenated, kind of like Trentino Alto Adige? But we know the story here, right? Like that northern half is kind of German-speaking Austrian land, and then the southern half was Italian. But through all the world wars and then exchanging territory, they became Italian territory finally. So they just linked it up Trentino Alto Adige. Similar with the Friuli Venezia Giulia, because it's right into Venice and Friuli region. But it's nothing like that here. It's just the region also kind of divides, but it's not because of two different countries or territorial dispute or anything like that. It was during the Roman times, it was actually two different regions, and over time they've kind of combined into one administrative district. So the northern half, really starting from Bologna and going up north, is really the Emilia region, and then Romagna is the southern half of this region. Funny enough, the Emilia part, the northern half of it, is where the Lambrusco comes from. And because this Po River, which runs all the way from Piedmont, running all the way through, right? Po River, if you remember Langhe in Piedmont, that's right through Barolo and Barbaresco. That runs all the way through the northern end of Bologna and then drains out into the Adriatic Sea. So because it's an alluvial fan of this Po River, this is a very, very fertile land, which is incredible for all the farming. There's a ton of agriculture taking place in the northern part of Emilia-Romagna. Again, this is probably why a lot of the kind of really delicious Italian products that we think of come from this region, because the agriculture, the incredibly fertile valley that exists on just the south of the Po River. But I've actually spoken with some people from the Midwest. This person was from Wisconsin, and she's visited Emilia-Romagna. I've actually never been there. And she said it was funny because going to Emilia, you think of these kind of like, cultural icons, culinary uh, uh, capital of Italy, and all of that. But once you get out here, once you get out of the city, so Modena, Bologna, Parma is a different story. But once you get out into the field, it literally looks like just a big ass, gigantic, expensive farmlands. So she was like, "This reminds me a lot of Wisconsin. Like it doesn't look all that different, but that's basically kind of what it looks like until you get up into this Apian Mountain, which is this mountain range that comes through on the southern half over here. That's essentially what divides Liguria and Emilia Romagna. So once you go up to these hillsides, is where you start to see really the quality, good wines being made. So a lot of the best Lambruscos and the quality Lambruscos that are being made here are basically all along this hillside running through this mountain as well. Once you go to the south, this is where you're going to start to see a lot more still wines. And here, what we're talking about is essentially Trebbiano and Sangiovese. And it says it right here on the map. So Trebbiano, another Italian. I feel like, I've been talking shit on Italian white wines for a while now, starting from last month. But of all the Italian white wines outside of Pinot Grigio, Trebbiano is probably the another one that I consider to be extremely, extremely neutral. It is, think of it as like a cousin of a very unoaked uh, uh, Chardonnay. It's got some body to it, but really we're talking about some citrus, little alcohol, maybe little rocks if you get it from the right site. But we're talking about very, very neutral, kind of a cousin of a Chardonnay. And then Sangiovese, obviously. There's a lot of really bad, really light Sangiovese coming out of Emilia Romagna as well. But once you get into the hills again, getting closer to Tuscany, this is where, the Sangiovese is a king. The quality gets much better. So there are some pretty decent quality, actually quite good quality Sangiovese coming up from here. And it's actually a pretty interesting, fun tasting to do to get some Sangiovese-based wines from Tuscany, like Chianti or Brunello, and then taste it side by side with some Sangiovese from Emilia Romagna or Romagna. Because you see that little bit of there's a lot more clay and sand in the soil over here as opposed to in Tuscany. So you see some of that soil difference. So it's kind of fun to do. Yeah, mentioned this, but Lambrusco, pretty lenient. Like I mentioned, only 15% of the wines in this region are in a DOC or DOCG level. Even Lambrusco, very lenient in terms of how it can be made, what color it has to be, and all of that. But another thing that it is very lenient on is its sugar level. So oftentimes Lambrusco, especially here in America, gets a really bad rap, and justifyingly so, because all through the 70s and 80s, the Lambrusco that came into the US were these kind of like sweet, fruity, just kind of a pound juice. It's just like a sparkling Manusep, is that Manusevitz? The bar mitzvah wine. It's like it almost tastes like that. And that was kind of style that became really popular in the 70s and 80s. And arguably that's kind of what put Lambrusco on the map. But the downside of all of that is that's the kind of the image that the wine got stuck with. And to this day, when you talk about Lambrusco, particularly the older folks who kind of lived through the 70s, drank wines through 70s and 80s, think of Lambrusco as this kind of a sweet, fruity, sparkling grape juice, essentially. But hopefully this month, I can change your opinion on Lambrusco because there's some delicious quality Lambrusco being made, particularly today being a prime example of that as well. By the way, if you're wondering what that OG Lambrusco that made big in the US was, is Banfi, which is a big Italian brand. Banfi made a wine called Reunite with an I, so R-I Unite. That's the brand, the Lambrusco that basically put Lambrusco on the map for the Americans. So I do believe they still make it. So if you ever come across a bottle somewhere, you should check it out to see what that is all about, or don't, because it's probably not going to be very good. But just to talk about the Emilia Romagna a little bit more. So the climate here is continental with a very hot and humid summer, with the winter being very cold and wet. So yeah, the temperature varies widely season to season. Varieties here: Lambrusco, Sangiovese, Trebbiano, Albana. We talked about that. Region is divided into two: north and south. Emilia being the north, Romagna being the south. Emilia is kind of, even though it has all that farmlands and all that outside, because of Bologna, all the cultural as well as the culinary development that has taken place there, and all the wealth, quite frankly, all the wealth that comes from all the agricultural industries in Emilia, it is considered more elegant, more cultured. It is definitely richer half of the Emilia Romagna. Romagna is considered much more rustic, a little more hilly, and a lot more woodsy. So just a little different between the two. Even the cuisine wise, Emilia is known for that kind of all the things that we talked about, all the delicious Italian dishes, but also they have a liberal use of pork in their cooking. In Romagna, as it gets closer to the Adriatic Sea, the food becomes a lot more seafood driven. So you see things like seafood risotto and grilled fish. So again, I've never been there again, but you know, it sounds like it'd be a really fun place to visit. Not only our food food delicious, but there's so much difference between going from seafood driven kind of a region going up and then finding really pork driven, the best exports of Italy, so to speak, at your disposal. So fun region. If you ever go there, let me know because I want to hear all about it. All right, let's talk a little bit about who makes this one. It's this guy. His name is Christian Belle. So Cantina della Volta is a name of it's a family winery, but the guy in charge is this guy, Christian Belle. He's a fourth generation Belle winemaker from Modena. This winery is just literally north of Modena, like 10 minutes north of Modena, a little bit northwest of Bologna. It was he and his father that really started the kind of the revolution in this region. They both, you know, being a third and fourth generation Lambrusco producer, they've obviously had a lot of respect and enjoyment for various different sparkling wines around the world or from around the world. But one particular sparkling wine style that they really enjoyed were always the traditional method or traditional method champenois wines, but in particularly champagne is what we really spoke to them. And I don't blame them because champagne is fucking great. So they actually made bunch of his dad and Christian and his dad, both of them, made bunch of visits to Epernay, which is a city in Champagne and a region in Champagne, to study how champagnes are made and kind of went under tutelage under different producers, champagne producers, and to learn how to apply method champenois or traditional method into their wines. So they decided to come back to Porto, which is where they're from, to Sassari Modena that I mentioned, and decide to experiment with making Lambrusco using traditional method. And you may be wondering at this point, then, okay, if that is something so revolutionary and new, how is Lambrusco made? So back in the days, Lambrusco was essentially method ancestral. So the same way Petnat, the Pétillant Naturel is made, which is you go through one single fermentation and all inside the bottle. So you start the wine, it starts fermenting. Before it ferments out completely dry, you bottle the wine, cap it, and then all the remaining sugar and the yeast, all the yeast eats up the remaining sugar and then spits out CO2, and that becomes frizzante or sparkling, and then that's how method ancestral works. This is one fermentation that takes place. But these days, almost all, when I say all, we're talking about probably 90 to 95% of Lambrusco that you'd come across on the market are pretty much all made through Charmat method, which is the tank method that Prosecco is made from. So you go through two fermentations, but the first fermentation takes place, they make the base wine, and then you put the second one inside of another tank, huge stainless steel tank, throw some yeast, throw some sugar on there, and then let it re-ferment. It gets all sparkling, and then you filter it out, you bottle it, and you sell it off. That's usually how almost all Lambrusco is made these days. There are very few producers that make all bottled bottle fermented Lambrusco, whether it be the method ancestral, the pennant method that I mentioned, or in this case, in Christian Ballet's case, in a traditional champagne method. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it still is true, but when we featured that red bottle, or a bottle with a red cellophane wrap on it, Cantina della Volta was the only producer that is 100% dedicated to making their wines through a traditional method. There's no other Lambrusco producer that makes all of their wines through a traditional method. So that's something that set them apart. They really thought that that was the best way to build more complexity, as well as showcase the kind of the terroir, the region where it comes from, the potentials of the Lambrusco grapes. So they really dedicated themselves to this traditional method. There's no one else that does it like that. So in a way, what we're tasting today is not a very typical Lambrusco, because no one else does it like this. No one else makes their wine through a champagne method. Everybody else makes it through the Charmat method. Everybody else makes it through the method ancestral, but they're making it through the champagne method. And to me, this shows. When we get to tasting it, we'll talk about it, but the autolytic character, that kind of easy, savory, that brioche, bread, toast bread, bread dough, that kind of all that flavor you can only get from leaving the wine on the lees for a long period of time. You get, which is what you get in champagne. You get it here, which is a pretty rare thing, pretty rare special thing, especially in Lambrusco. So in the 90s, Giuseppe, which is Christian's dad, bought no, sorry, in 1981, Giuseppe Bellet, he purchased the farm that the current family estate sits on. It was an 34-hectare farm, 10 of which were dedicated to grape production. And on this farm, which is about 2,100 feet above sea level, they in the 90s, Giuseppe really honed and improved his skills, and then started putting out these traditional method Lambruscos, started gaining some attraction, started winning some awards. And then starting from the 2000s, it's really his son, Christian, that took over. And now he's continuing on this experimentation. And in 2010, they rebranded their family estate and named it Cantina della Volta. And so this winery, Christian's been running it solo since 2010. Christian is also the one who's begun moving the family winery into organic certification. And he's also the one, before Christian, his dad, Giuseppe, even though he was a big traditional method fan, that was an experimentation, because he still had, livelihood to support. And, he still was making wines the way his father and his great father made, which were method ancestral. And then he had a little bit of champagne method wines on the side as an experiment. And Christian is the one who decided to completely let go of any other method but champagne method. So he's the current fourth generation, decided to shake things up in his family estate and do things differently. Kind of make a big bet that this is going to be the move that they should make as a family estate. And I think it was a great move, because it's delicious. I consider Christian's wines, Cantina della Volta's wine, to be some of the best Italian sparkling wines coming out of Italy right now. They're featured in like every Francescana that I was telling you about earlier, the #1 restaurant in the world. I don't think it is anymore, but they used to feature Christian's wines on their wine list. A lot of Michelin 3-star restaurants feature his wines on the list. Last time I was in Friuli, a lot of restaurants I went to had his wines on the list. So it's a very well-known, very well-respected wines at this point. And to see Lambrusco to treat it in such a reverent manner is a pretty incredible thing, because you rarely see that happen. Because Lambrusco is usually treated as just kind of a party juice, and oftentimes it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to see it to reach the heights that it has reached, it's pretty cool. And that's part of the reason why I'm featuring him for the second time in this wine. All right, so what is this wine? Oh, by the way, sorry, I meant to show you some other pictures, which is, so this is basically what Emilia looks like on the farmland. So this is why, like my friend from Wisconsin was like, "This looks like fucking Wisconsin. Like, why does it look any different?" But um, this I'm telling you, they do all their riddling through a machine instead of hand riddling. And then this is the actual vineyard where this grape or this bottle comes from. So again, not on the flat, but on the hillside. Different slopes, different aspect, which gives a more UV exposure. You all know this, but yeah, ripening the grape, keeping it cool because of the elevation and all of that, which makes for a good wine. So yeah, that's the actual vineyard where it comes from. This is part of the process. This is what Emilia looks like in a farmland. And then there's a Christian state. Just wanted to show. All right. What is this wine? So this is 100% Lambrusco di Sorbara. Sorbara is probably my favorite Lambrusco variety. Though admittedly, I have not tried all 60 different Lambrusco varieties, but there's, again, 60 different Lambrusco varieties. Just to study Lambrusco and try all 60 different of them via feed on its own. But yeah, it's really what you see is the most is Sorbara, uh, Gasparosa, which is what we're going to taste next week, and then Salamino, which is what we're going to taste either the third week or the fourth week, I forget. So we're going to taste three different Lambrusco varieties this month, but we're going to kick it off with Sorbara because it is my favorite. It produces the brightest and the lightest style of all the Lambruscos. I think, in my opinion, it has kind of the most elegant fruit, floral kind of aromatics, and probably this is why I like it the most. But it also has the most searing acid backbone of all of them. So yeah, we're not talking about like Gasparosa, we're going to taste next week. So try to remember this wine and try to remember what we get to next week. But the Gasparosa tends to be much inkier, much darker, even a little spicier, a lot more fruit, as opposed to Sorbara, what we're tasting today, which is a lot more lifted, elegant, a lot more treble notes. Next week, a lot more bass notes. This week, treble. Next week, bass. Just kind of think of it that way. So how is this wine made? So this is straight from the tech sheet, and I want to kind of go through that. So if you guys ever come across an information like this, you know how to make sense of it. So it says, our rosé is obtained from a selection of the best Sorbara grapes, entirely gathered in small cases, 15 kilograms max by manual harvesting, then softly pressed. Why does that matter? Why does he go out of the way to make a distinction about that small case? So whole idea is that he wants to not burst the grapes. He wants to put a very little in the basket. So he wants all the juices, all the berries to be exactly intact until until he presses it, gently presses it. The reason being, as soon as that berry pops, the wine or the grape or the juice starts oxidizing. As soon as it starts oxidizing, you start to lose a lot of the kind of elegant, really fragile aromas and flavors. So this just goes to show how much he's trying to preserve that kind of really delicate varietal characters of Sorbara. So it's giving you a, step or insight into his thinking. Then the must is submitted to clarification, followed by alcoholic fermentation into controlled temperature stainless steel tanks. All pretty standard stuff. So he lets the must kind of settle. So all the sediments kind of settles out, all the clear portion. He puts it in a controlled temperature stainless steel tank. So he's trying to, again, keep it very, very pure and varietally correct. And then he's putting a temperature control on it. So he wants to, again, retain all the elegant kind of fragile aromatics. After remaining at least 6 months inside tanks for a maturation process, the wine receives selected yeast prior to being bottled. Very typical of sparkling wine that goes through 2 fermentations, right? So you make the first wine in the stainless steel tank, then now he throws yeast and a sugar in there to restart the second fermentation. The bottles are then stored horizontally in piles for the long re-fermentation process and maturation at ambient temperature, constantly kept at 12 degrees Celsius. So this is the lees, We talked about champagne method. The reason how you get all the savory notes, the autolytic flavor, is by exposing the wine to sit on the lees, and this is what he's talking about. Just keeps it in a cage on the lees for a long time at a constant temperature of 12 degrees Celsius. The following steps are remuage, which is a fancy French word for that process where they come and they turn the bottle and turn it up a bit, or turn the bottle and turn it up a bit until it's pointing down. All the leaves get collected on the top, right? So that's what remuage is. He does that through a machine. Disgorgement, which is the popping of that crown cap, shoots the leaves out, right? You add the base wine a little bit, adjust the sugar level, and then you put a cork on it. And the disgorgement date is always almost written on the back. So here we go. If you look at the right side of that label right there, it says DEG, or DEG November 2022, right? With almost all traditional method wines, it will tell you when it was disgorged. The reason they do that is so you can tell how long it's been sitting on the lees. So this was disgorged in November 2022, and this vintage is 2017, right? So for 20, this means 20. It was picked in the malted. The primary first fermentation happened in the winter of 2018, 2017. By the spring of 2018 is probably when he put this on the lead, or put the secondary fermentation on there. So we're talking about from spring of 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And this was disgorged in November. So it's almost 2023. So it's almost 5 years. So this wine has spent almost 5 years on the lees, to give you an idea of how long this has been on the lees. And just as a point of comparison, champagne that is vintage champagne, meaning non-blended single vintage champagnes, by law, they have to spend 5 years on these. So this is spending the same amount of time that vintage champagnes are legally, minimum amount that vintage champagne is legally required to spend. So again, we're talking about Lambrusco, yet he's choosing to age his wines on these for 5 years, which is a pretty remarkable. So yeah, he disgorges it in November 22. Liqueur de Expedition, which is a that base wine, little bit of sugar that I was telling you about to adjust it. And then this one does get additional bottle aging because this is a disgorge in 2022, but this just landed here in the States earlier this year. So it spent another year and a half in the bottle before it got released to the market. So 5 years on the lease, and then another year and a half bottle aging. Then it got released into the market at the beginning of 2024. So a lot of time this wine has spent, and this is part of the reason why wines like this are not usually cheap. But having said that, we'll wait until we get to guessing the price to see how much you guys think this wine should cost. All right, that's it. Any questions about process, the producer, the region, anything I just want to learn? And also, I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. Thirsty.
I have a question.
What's up?
Sorry if you already said this, but the actual grape, the Lambrusco di Sorbara, is it a red grape or a white grape? It's a red grape. Okay.
It's a red grape.
Okay.
Yeah. So all the Lambrusco varieties are all red grapes, black grapes. Yeah. So anytime you see a rosé, obviously it's the amount of maceration time that it has spent on the skins. Or if you ever see a white Lambrusco, it's because they just pressed it and then took it straight off the skins.
Okay.
Yeah, but Lambrusco varieties themselves are all black grapes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Hey, Un, what should we know about the fact that there's like an importer on the back through Richmond, and then somebody, I don't know, I don't recognize Giuseppe Locascio out of New York. What's going on there?
Yeah, that is an inch. That I don't know. that's selected by Giuseppe Locasio. I don't know who that person is. Selezione, Varietà, New York, New York. I didn't notice that. I'll ask the importer. It may perhaps because sometimes this happens. So if there's a single importer somewhere else, so this person, the Selezione Varietali, maybe an importer based out of New York that imports this, and Lestori Wines, which is who I bought this wine from, out of Richmond, Virginia, maybe the distributor for the DMV market. But if they start selling enough quantity, oftentimes the importers themselves will allow the distributor to buy the wines directly from the importer. I mean, from the producer, instead of having to go through them, and then they just get a cut. Instead of them having to deal with the logistics of bringing it in the container, then shipping it from New York to Richmond, John at Listori Wines may be buying this wine directly from Cantina della Volta and having it shipped into Richmond port, and then so he can distribute from there, saving costs. But the actual importing license or the rights, the sole importing rights for United States may belong to this company called Selezione Vitale. That would be my guess, but I can verify. But oftentimes they don't usually put the importer name on there. But yeah, that's interesting when they direct import. But yeah, I'll find out. But for all intents and purposes for us, Les Story out of Richmond is who we're buying this for in DC area. If you see this wine in DMV, they got it from the story. Any other questions? And Julia, yes, I did say 60 varieties. That is insane. Yes. All right, let's taste the wine. All right, who wants to take the appearance? Bueller. Bueller.
I'll do it.
All right, Phil. Thanks for stepping up. All right, appearance.
All right, this is it's clear.
This wine is clear. Sure.
Very clear.
Intensity. Yeah, yeah.
I'd say it's a pale.
Yeah.
And it's almost an orange to me. Salmon, maybe?
Yeah, I would personally call this salmon. Yeah, somewhere between pale and medium.
It's not pink.
Yeah, it's not pink for sure. Yeah, I want to call this salmon. I'll probably call this about pale salmon. I think you are right on. Pale, somewhere between pale and medium. If you want medium, I think that's totally acceptable, but pale to medium salmon.
Right.
Any other observations?
Yeah, it has obviously has bubbles and they keep going. They keep running.
Yeah, very persistent bubbles. Yeah, they're like very like pinprick small bubbles that continue to rise. My wine's been sitting in the glass this whole time since we started call 8:30, and it's still has these bubbles
bubbling.
Yeah, coming up. And that's part of the thing about traditional method or method champenois is that only by spending that much time on the lees and the bubbles, the bubbles get so dissolved into the wine that it just becomes persistent. It just doesn't go flat very quickly. And these very small pinprick bubbles like that, it only can come from traditional method wines. No other method can produce this small fine bubbles. So I don't know. Excellent, excellent. You get to pick the next person for the notes.
All right, the person below me is Christopher.
All right, Chris.
We are here. Sorry. I had to hide the computer from the baby. He's keep trying to join the call. Okay. So, been a while. Let's see.
Let's do this. Oh, sorry, nose.
Oh, nose. It is clean.
Clean.
I would say medium plus intensity. I get it, a solid in like 2 inches off the glass.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a terrible wine glass for this thing, but like even here, like I still get it like way off here. So I believe you. If I probably have a proper glass, it probably medium plus. Yeah, medium plus. All right, medium plus intense aromas of.
Let's see. I'm not getting much floral. I feel like you might be able to convince me of like some sort of blossoms or maybe a violet, but I think it's much more fruit, like red fruit and
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think it's overly like super floral here. Yeah, maybe some blossom, maybe some rose petal, but really, yeah, not a hugely floral wine, so to speak. All right, any green fruit?
You could maybe convince me like quince or something, but yeah, or like really crisp green apple or some now that like some sour gooseberries maybe, but I think I think maybe that's just the acidity, like, and because of taste.
I mean, I guess some. I guess some like an appley little thing here, like maybe even like a little yellow apple here, little like red apple, but like something appley, not crazy, like obviously not like a cider, but like something along that line of like people. Okay, understand. Any citrus?
Some. Not real. I mean, maybe some lemon, but not in the way that you typically get from like your standard white wine call out, because this is obviously different. Maybe just some like some peel or zest, but not like fresh or green lemon.
Agreed. Yeah, if I were to call lemon, I mean, obviously, I always want to call lemon on wines like this, but like, if I were to call lemon on this, it's gonna be like Meyer lemon. There's some sort of like orangey kind of like ripe, really ripe kind of a thing going on here. It's not like the fresh, underripe lemon juice. So yeah, maybe like a really ripe Meyer lemon, maybe some orange peel, maybe some lemon peel. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, cool. Stone fruit.
Yeah, I would say some apricot potentially.
Yep.
Some, I don't get like peach or nectarine or anything. I feel like I get mostly red fruit on this, so definitely wait until we're getting there. But yeah.
Okay.
No tropical fruit to speak of, at least for me.
Any tropical?
Nope.
Yeah, me neither. All right, red fruit, give it to me.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I get more on the like strawberry, raspberry side.
Yeah.
Not as much cherry.
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with currant, but I could see something in that vein, and maybe just cranberry because of
100%.
the high acidity.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very like
100%.
Yeah.
And then that is very in line with Sorbara grape variety that I was telling you about. So remember this next week when we get there. Like, I mean, obviously this is rosé too. This is not like a full red that we're tasting here. But with Sorbara, the fruit quality tends to be a lot brighter, a lot redder. And then when you get to Gasparosa, which is what we're tasting next week, it gets dark. We get into real blackberry, like black cherry, black plum, that territory. So changes quite a bit, but particularly with the rosé, I think these three that you called out to me is like right dead on. cranberry, raspberry, strawberry, maybe even little red plum. But yeah, all the red fruit is basically what we're getting here, for sure. Nature of the fruit?
Pretty ripe, if not underripe. A hair, like definitely not. It's not stewed or jammy or cooked. It's, I would say, like right on that cusp of ripeness. Yeah.
Agreed. This is fresh, ripe, just underripe perhaps, but yeah, there's nothing overripe jammy about this. 100%. Any herbaceous, herbal, spice, anything that is non-fruit here, at least in the primary world?
Not that I'm getting. I feel like I can often be talked into some sort of like tomato leaf or grass or something, but I'm not picking up anything at this point, but always happy to be led there.
How about any of the minerality? Anything stony?
Yeah,
dirty?
I mean, definitely some minerality. Like wet stone, bluestone, river rock, something like that.
Yeah. There's something. It's hard. It's not so much on the smell, but we'll talk more about this when we're tasting it. To me, there's like a textural component here, like that, kind of like a, I don't know, just like a chalky kind of a thing going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some minerally stony kind of thing. All right, let's get a secondary. What you got?
I'm not getting all, like, considering how long this spent on the leaves, I'm not getting as much as I thought I would.
No.
Like, it's so fresh and bright and ripe fruit driven that, yeah, I would not have called out that this was aged this long on the leaves, if at all.
No? Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, like, I guess I get some, but not the level of,
not as much. Yeah. Okay.
Not vintage champagne level, almost 5 years on the lees.
Yeah, I mean, given also vintage champagnes will oftentimes age way more than 5 years. They will go into 8-9 years before they get released. They get further bottle aging as well. Even non-vintage champagnes, oftentimes if you're getting it from a well-known producer, they will age it way longer than was minimum necessary. So anywhere between 3 to 5 years. So this is probably
now,
like a
now that I'm like looking for it, I can kind of smell some like cooking bread and like you're proving it, like the yeast stuff is that, but yeah, not baked bread or cheesiness, but like a bread dough in progress.
Yeah, to me, exactly.
Very the background to me.
100%. To me, there's like that proofing bread dough thing here going on. And that's kind of the thing that I really liked about this wine was that, with the champagne, and you drink it for different reasons. With the champagne, that's whatever, right? You want all the autolytics, and you want the acid, you want the chalky minerality, you want all those things. But it's less about the fruit. But here, the fact that I was getting plenty of that red fruit and some of that kind of like fresh fruit primary thing, but on top of that, I was getting this like a savory, yeasty bread dough. And I cheated. I tasted this before I smelled it, but like I tasted more on the palate. But like, there's definitely some like a cheese rind thing kind of going on here as well. Like there's like a savory, easy quality on top of that fruit is what really is delicious. And that's usually the case with the rosé, champagne, or traditional method wines anyway. But particularly here is what I really like. But yeah, to me, this has got that bread dough, like fresh bread dough, little cheese rind, all that stuff for sure. Any MLF, any oak?
Not really.
Yeah, me neither. Any tertiaries?
No.
Yep.
Like I feel like getting the secondary was a stretch, so definitely not there yet.
Yeah, definitely not tertiary. Yeah, we're in the oxidative world. Yeah, This is still very, very fresh. Given that it's 2017, so this is what, 7 years old. The fact that this is still this fresh is actually quite remarkable. So, excellent. Good job. You get to pick the next person for the palette.
Excellent. Joe K, you are right under me.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Hold on. I only have like a tiny bit left. Let me see.
Refill, bro. Refill.
Yep. That's all she wrote. I have to confess, I didn't really get a lot of the nose and nearly it as what you guys went through, but
okay.
I'll do my best.
All right. Let's go through it. Palette.
I'd say it's pretty dry.
Bang on. I don't know if it says Brut on here. Does it say Brut on here? This does get a touch of dosage, but not a lot. Like we're talking about, like, I think last time I checked, I think it was like 4.5 grams or something. So it's nothing, but it does get a touch of dosage, but still very much in the dry there. Acidity.
I call this high.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a burn to it, but like when I rub it on my front teeth, like it takes like a while for that to kind of go away. This is really pretty high acid. It hits me in a different way than typical because it's, you know, bubbly, but
yeah, this acid on this thing is ripping. And it's part of why I love Sorbara. Is because of that acid. But yeah, this thing is ripping. Like I'm still feeling it. Yeah.
It's like, it's not overpowering. You wouldn't, you know, it's not like what you think of when you first taste it. So
yeah, 100%. But 100% agree on high acid. At minimum medium plus, but I agree. I'll go with high plus here. High as well. Tannin?
No tannin.
Yeah, no tannin either. Alcohol.
I'm never good at this. 14%.
Yeah, 14% on a sparkling, huh? I'm gonna say like 12 and a half. So as a general kind of rule of thumb,
I drink a lot of whiskey.
Rarely,
this, you know,
you're rarely gonna see 14%.
Yeah,
because a lot of it is because that acid you were talking about. For the sparkling wine to be good, it has to have really good acid backbone. And in order to have that good of an acid backbone, oftentimes the grapes are picked early. So for the wine to reach 14% when it's picked early is pretty rare. It's rarely going to happen. So 12 and a half, which puts right us at medium. Body.
Well, just education. So, you know, we did our German month recently, and a lot of their wines are based upon how late you could pick them, and yet they're acidic. So what's up with that? Because of the climate?
Riesling, just naturally, natural acidity is just so high on those things. And part of the reason, so it's the same thing. Riesling, Shannon, Gros Manseng, Petit Manseng, what are some other varieties? Malvasia to a certain extent. Basically all the kind of a great Semillon, all the wines that have high natural sugar, but also able to hold on to that acid as they ripen. Basically, these are all the varieties that make the greatest dessert wines in the world. So like Riesling makes some of the greatest, most age-worthy dessert wines in the world. The Trockenbeer, let's say, of them, is because it's able to hold on to that acid, even though the sugar ripeness is super high. So yeah, that's some variety just naturally, they're just able to do that. They're just talented like that, you know.
You could champagneify some of those if you're crazy, but
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Chardonnay is not one of them, but yes, it's one of them. Okay, so body, where are we?
I call this light, maybe medium minus.
Yeah, not super low body, and it's not meant to be. It's got medium 12.5%. It's got ripping acid. It's not meant to be this big full body thing. So like, yeah, I'll call this like 1% medium minus. It's not a full body wine. It's not meant to be a full body wine. Yeah, agreed. Moose. How
creamy to aggressive?
You think the moose is aggressive?
I think so, yeah, a little bit.
Try this.
My bottle's calmed down a lot now, but when I first opened it, it was like, okay, this has got some oomph to it. But I think the verbiage they use here, calling the middle of the road in terms of moose creamy, is a little weird.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, this is.
I would call it medium to medium plus bubbles, but I wouldn't describe it as creamy. I don't,
Yeah, I've always had this section to be the most inaccurate in terms of grid verbiage to use.
And like Sprite to the end, there's
it's interesting. I earlier I tasted it because the wine was probably sitting out for a while, but I thought the bubbles were quite delicate. But you're right. Like I just poured a fresh new glass, tasted it, and it's actually bubbles up quite quickly. So I'll go all the way to aggressive. Like aggressive wines are like soda wines, and to me, it just doesn't hit me like a can of soda.
Not Andre,
Yeah, exactly. So I'll call this. Let's go with creamy. As inaccurate as that may be, or imprecise as it may be. Let's go with creamy.
Medium.
Yeah, exactly. Flavor intensity.
I go medium plus.
Yeah, agreed. It's got the intensity. The flavors here they're not shy.
Really lingered.
Are you confirming everything that Christopher called out? Is there anything else that particularly stick out to you or different on the palate?
I get a little cider cooked fruit, like a very light kind of dash in there. But other than that, like,
sorry, you get what?
A little bit of that dried fruit. I get like a little.
Oh,
jam.
Okay.
But I think that the nose and the flavor are just a little different, a little departed here.
Yeah, to me, I mean, these things, like, I almost always get a little bit of like a blossomy rose thing, especially with like a rosés. But that just may be just power of association that I have in my own head. But yeah, some of the green that we call that citrus, ripe, Myers lemon, little orange peel kind of a thing.
I think the zest you mentioned is kind of right on. It definitely has like more of a rind kind of.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Chris called that apricot. I don't get much stone fruit on here, but you guys say apricot, tropical, red fruit. All the red fruit he called out, I think, is a red dead on. Cranberry, raspberry, strawberry. Yep, much more red fruit, black fruit. So. Good fruit. There's nothing unripe about all this. Nothing herbaceous green. But here, this is more of a textural thing, more of a mouthfeel than a flavor, so to speak. But I do get that some of that like kind of a chalky chalk dust kind of a thing going on here.
Maybe it's fine. I don't know. Tiny bit.
Yeah.
My teaspoons.
Yeah. And then this, particularly on the palate, more so than the nose, is the cheese rind. Like I get a lot of cheese rind with this thing. Like to me, this is like a pre-cheese rind thing. Like the part that a lot of people kind of don't eat and eat around. To me, it's not that.
Yogurtiness. I wouldn't call it cheese. Tiny. A smidge.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a aged cheese rind, like a Parmesan cheese rind, but it's like that fresh cheese rind that has just been like soft and not like old and hard aged. I guess some of that, like some of that aged and then
had a thing of yogurt 10 minutes ago.
or maybe yeah, like that like skim that like the fucking layer that you skim off of a yogurt. But yeah, something along that line. There's something similar to that here. And then that fresh dough, all of that for sure. No MLF, no oak. Obviously, just didn't touch any wood whatsoever, and still this no tertiary here. Everything is secondary and primary, all of that.
Yeah, right. I agree with like that. I was a little surprised. It said 5 years in the lease. It didn't really.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's great. I like this a lot, but
yeah,
they probably could have stopped
too. Okay.
or something.
Finish. How long is the finish?
I would call this like a medium plus finish.
Yeah, agreed. It's got the length.
I'm all out now, but that struck me.
Yeah, from when you tasted earlier. Okay. Take it on for us. How good is this, and would you age it?
I would call this good to very good. I don't know if I would age it much. I mean, just with the knowledge that it's already done 5 years on the lees, and there's not really a lot of body. I mean, the acidity could go interesting, but I don't know. You could age it for another 2 or 3 years, and might.
This is where I may disagree with you. So, quality level wise, I agree with your call. Very good. We call it. I mean, you could argue that acid here is too ripping. Like the acid, this is too tart, and you can't express other things. I don't think it necessarily is, but again, I have a different acid scale than most people. But sparkling wine, that's what you're gonna get. I don't think acid is stopping. We're stopping most of us from experiencing other things. So I would say this wine is balanced. Concentration wines, we call it medium plus on the nose, medium plus on the palate. So medium plus. Complexity wise, we call some maybe low levels of floral, some green fruit, citrus, Chris calls stone fruit, definitely red fruit. You call it like a touch of maybe dry fruit, but fresh, ripe fruit. And then some minerality for sure running through. And then the secondary yeasty kind of this autolytic thing going on. So I would call this at least medium plus, leaning on medium plus. If you're gonna end up a medium, high end of medium, maybe low end of medium plus, but I'm gonna go with the medium plus on complexity. And then on the length, we called it medium plus as well, right? So all across, we're looking at kind of like straight down and medium plus, only with the complexity being the possibly medium, high end of medium, but that ends us right here medium plus. So I'm gonna call this very good. Now, potential for aging. Two things, right? Tannin, acid, structurally, you need that for the wines to age. This obviously doesn't have tannin, but this has ripping acid. We call it high acid. So very good backbone. So structural backbone. On top of that, we called concentration medium plus, length medium plus. If there's one thing that is potentially lacking or we would want more out of this wine is complexity, right? You wanted more autolytic flavors. Both you and Chris called out how you would like that if this is a little more autolytic, maybe. And you can add that complexity by aging the wine. And we have the incredible backbone of the acid. And we have the concentration that to make sure that you don't lose it. So I would say, and then complexity was the only thing that was between good and very good. We didn't say solid and very good or medium plus. So I would say this is an excellent candidate for aging. Now, the question is, how long do you age this for?
Yeah, at this point, it's been in bottles since 2017. It's not showing much. So another 20 years.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like it's still so fresh, right? Not a sign of tertiary. Everything is still very much in primary. Some secondary, but it's like you don't have a whole lot of that. So I don't know. I mean, that's an excellent question. How much longer do this go for? But given that high acid, given the concentration of medium plus, if this is a pronounced concentration, I would say yes, maybe 10 plus years, going to 15. But I would say at this point, even at this point, it's 2017 wine and it's 2024, so 7 years later. I would say this can easily go for another 8 years, 5 to 8 years. I think at 5 years, it probably start to show some tertiary. At 8, it may show up a little bit more and probably go on longer. But I would say easily 5 to 8. So come back in 2029 to 2032. Come back and check up on the wine and see if it's going in the direction that you're going. Is what I'll say.
I'll bet you a bottle. It's not going to do much.
All right, we're gonna come back in 2032 and see what happens to this bottle.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good job, everyone. Any questions? Any disagreements? Does somebody agree with that, Joe, that you wouldn't age this? You think it's better off drinking this now than putting it down?
I mean, it's delicious now, so it might be hard to hold on to it, but yeah. If you have the patience to buy a case and keep a couple bottles, but
okay.
I'm rarely that guy. This very tasty this summer, especially I mean, you're in California, but it was like high 80s, like swimming humidity. Like it was a rough metro home today with all the people walking home packed in like sardines with the turn off. It was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of like throwing this in the same category as like champagne. Like, would I, go through the effort of aging this versus a comparable bottle of champagne? Probably not.
Oh,
good for them. They made a thing. That's like,
All right, Joe. I'm gonna take that as because you know how much I revere champagne. That I'm not gonna take that as an insult. Because I think this is an incredible champagne alternative. I think this is a good, fun, interesting way to showcase what champagne method can do in a different region, on a different soil type, different varieties, and all of that. Given if you gave me 2017, let's say it's exactly the same, 2017 rosé champagne versus 2017 rosé Lambrusco, like this one, and let's pop it open and say which one would you rather drink? There's no question about it. There's nothing that is quite like champagne. It's just the climate, the marginalized, how cold it is over there, the crazy chalky, the soil. You can literally pick up a rock and write on the blackboard. Like that's how much chalk there is in their soil. Like there's just nothing. And also the reserve wines. I mean, obviously, if it's gonna be vintage, that's a different story. But like even non-vintage, like the reserve wines that have built over last 80 to 150 years, and some of that being blended back to the bottle that you're drinking, like there's nothing that can compete. And because of that, they charge premium for it, and because of their incredible branding and marketing because of that. But
how much is the champagne alternative? I guess this is a good segue into how much
all right, think it. Excellent. Thank you for that segue, Christopher. So let's do this. Given that this is a great champagne alternative, essentially somebody who also revered champagne, went to champagne, studied all this, brought it back to Lambrusco, not even like, I don't know, Friuli or other regions that's like known for their sparkling like wines. He brought it back to Lambrusco and decided to do something serious with party wines. How much do you think this wine should cost, or how much do you think this wine is on a retail shelf? And how much would you be happy paying for this wine on a retail shelf? As a reference point, champagne, rosé champagne from 2017, first of all, probably won't vintage rosé champagne. It's so rare. it probably wouldn't even be released at this point. It will probably still be in their cellar, and they'll probably release that, I don't know, 2 to 5 years from now. So it probably would be hard to get. So on a release date, not even further aged, if you were to get your hands on 2017 rosé champagne, again, depends on who the producer is, what the year was, and all of that. I would say this can probably easily be $80. No, probably more, like 130 is what I would guess in terms of the pricing for a vintage rosé champagne. All right. 35, 30, 38, 32, 40, 35, 32, 32, 45, 45. All right. And the answer is, by the way, you guys are getting really good at this. On the retail shelf, this would be $38.50. So let's put it that way. Like something that would normally you would expect if you have to get this similar level of aging from champagne that will cost 120, 130, if you can't even get your hands on it, upon release is 38.51, 38.50, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, is this champagne? Of course not. You know, but is it a good alternative? I think, I don't know. You be the judge. Is it in terms of bang for your buck? Which one's better? Who knows? Who knows? I think there's a good argument that this is a much better bang for your buck. So, anyways, there it is. Any questions?
And how would you compare something like this to some of the like kava producers? Because I know like when we did some of the kavas, that those were you also come up with some great champagne alternatives, same production method.
Yeah. Different kind of wine. Like to me, kava has a different flavor profile, but in terms of aging and value, Grand Reserva Cava there's not much you can beat. Like there are not many things that can beat that. Yeah. Grand Reserva Cava would be, in terms of pricing, will be similar to this. So this is priced like a Grand Reserva Cava. Yeah. So different preference, different things, but
if you were at a restaurant, how would you know that this was the traditional method versus ancestral, or just
I mean, if you didn't know that, I think the best way is that you just know that Cantina della Volta, the traditional method wines. But outside of that, unless the som or the wine buyer puts it on the wine menu to let people know that there's something different than other Lambruscos, you wouldn't. There's no way. Because it'd be one thing if like Lambrusco di Sorvara, the DOC, legally required that it can only be made in champagne method, the traditional method. But that's not the case. You can make it in any way. You can make it in Charmat method, you can make it in ancestral method, you can make it in traditional method. It's very lenient. So, but here's another thing, Phil. If the DOC, if the Lambrusco di Sorvara probably required that this was made in traditional method, the price tag would be much higher. If everybody had to do it this way, it would probably be more expensive. That'd be my guess. You could get out your calipers and see how small the bubbles are. That is such a Charles Colin Chase comment there. I love it. Any other questions? I could have read that comment, Charles, without your name attached to it. I'd be like, I bet Charles wrote that. I love that you admitted to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. My French friends who are like, they always have like a house champagne, like a champagne that they always have on hand, and like that's what they'll say. They're like, this champagne has the smallest bubbles. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I don't think that's accurate, but fair enough.
Yeah. Good for
I
you.
mean, it's like they don't drink bad champagne, so I'm not like bothered by it.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I know. I was drinking this, and then I was looking back on. I was actually just happened to be. I ran out of memory on my Google Photos. I was going around and downloading all the photos from past years, and I came across my last trip to France, and I checked out all these different champagne bars around Paris and different places, and I was looking back on and remembering how cheap champagne was. It's just like, how do you not drink champagne in Paris or in France? It's just like,
yeah.
How did you become such a fan of Aigle-Aurier?
I don't know. I was just poured to me by a regular that brought it in for brunch one day, and then I was like, holy shit, because he knew that I love champagne. And we were talking about it, and he was like, "Oh, you've never had Aigle-Aurier?" I'm like, "No, like I don't. It went no." So he brought one in and then tasted it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like now I see what the hype is all about, and it lived up to the hype. And then I've tasted it maybe 3 or 4 more subsequent times, and each time it was just like, "Wow, this is legit. Like it's just not just hype, you know." So
Have you had anything since that's like supplanted that as your favorite?
for champagne,
Yeah.
There's a producer, and they're not like super high in the Laherte Ferer. Oh, here, I'll put it in the chat box. Ferer. I don't know if I'm spelling Ferer correctly. But their wines are becoming more and more allocated. But as a general house, I really, really like their wines a lot.
It's Ferer, like brothers. Freres.
Freres. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I never heard of it. That's cool.
Yeah, I like their wines a lot. Charles Dufour is like a maverick. He does like weird shit. As far as I know, he's the only one who does the fuck, I'm forgetting the French term, but it's the adding of the sugar and yeast to start the second fermentation. He uses frozen must from the same juice as opposed to adding yeast and sugar to restart the fermentation. Supposedly it's very difficult because like you cannot get it exactly where you want it. Like with the eating yeast and sugar, you know exactly down to the gram how many of each that you can add into it, looking at the pH level and other things. But with the must, like it's apparently it's a lot riskier. And he's the only one who does it, as far as I know. But he's wine that he's also like, most people don't know this, but like there's a Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, those 3 main varieties. There are like 5 other varieties that are allowed to be blended into champagne. But like he will go out there and make champagne out of just those 5 varieties. So like he's just kind of like a bit of a mad scientist, like experimental kind of guy. So you get kind of very outside the box champagne. It's still champagne because legally it's all allowed within that framework. But he does things that like a lot of people just don't do. So and it's not always a success. Sometimes it's like, this is fucking weird. Like this is not worth the money. But sometimes when it gets right, like it's amazing. So he's super fun. Yeah.
Are there people out there who are just like
trying different grapes in like the Metodo Champenoise, like, like I'm gonna do Riesling with Verdejo, like, I'm gonna do like something super floral with something super acidic, and like, I mean, I know it's expensive, right? It's like super time consuming and expensive, so I assume the answer is no.
I'd say there's probably somebody in California who's probably trying all of that. I feel like California is a good place where all of that.
I just heard of a winery that's they're either opening in Temecula or they're already opened, but they're a natural organic winery. I haven't tried it yet, but they make a blend of Tempranillo and Albarino. I'm so curious.
Yeah.
I had their Barbera and their Syrah, and they were both really good. I'm so curious about Tempranillo and Albarino. It just sounds crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. There's like indigenous variety from 2 different regions too. Like it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. Very weird. Can't wait to try it.
sounds like a late well survey bottling.
Yeah, 100%.
That sounds like something so crazy Sebastian would do it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
He has mixed red white blends, right?
Co-ferment, yeah,
like co-ferments of red and white. Yeah, like I mean, that's like the crazy. He'd be like, "Oh, here's what we're doing."
Yeah, I think their last rosé was a co-ferment. Yeah, they always have some level of co-ferment in there. Yeah,
I mean, I'm into it, right? Like if somebody's gonna spend their money to make something and all I have to spend is like $30 to try it, and like they're out like $800,000 for the grapes and harvest costs, and I'm like, sure, I'll spend $30 and tell you that it's not any good.
So this is what I say about Charles Dufour. So his mom is a very well regarded champagne producer. So he comes from that like safety net. Like he's not betting the house on these like wacky shit that he's doing. So he has something to fall back on. But nonetheless, like his wines are wild, especially in places like Champagne where it's like so fucking rigid and like built on tradition and nobody does anything different. Like there's that young guy who's doing something weird and wacky. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you need something to fall back on, inherited generational wealth is not a bad thing.
Yeah, turns out.
I wish I had that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of winemakers who have stuff to fall back on, Charles, you would go to, or maybe still do, go to Portugal a lot for work, right?
Yeah, I used to. I don't get to go so much now, but yeah.
Did you ever make it like to Bairrada to try any to like Luis Pato and like those wines? Because and I know I've talked to you about this, that Hadley and I went there for our honeymoon, and I think he has 3 daughters, and at least 2 of them are making wine at the winery under their own labels, doing their own thing. But it's like that they each are like, he pushed boundaries back in the like 80s or whatever in that area, and both his daughters are doing crazy co-ferments, pet nats, like a baga, like taken right off the leaf or like skins and like aged as a white and like other stuff. It was crazy. Like
I haven't been, but we did a Luis Pato in Wine Club.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we've had a Duckman's wine. Yeah.
This was and that wine was pretty crazy. I would say it was not delicious, but it was very interesting. I feel like it was like beyond tomato leaf. It was like tomato leaf bordering on like just straight up cucumber.
Very savory, yeah. Super savory. And the acid on those wines are like ridiculous. I was just like, what? Even as somebody who likes wine, acid, I was like, what is happening with this thing? Like, what?
Yeah. But when Hadley and I were there was like somebody else, like somebody in the wine industry who was getting a tour, and like we just kind of like showed up because the honeymoon, we like called ahead, nobody answered, but we like showed up, and but like it was Maria Pato who does the label, was like doing the stuff. So yeah, it was pretty wild to get to try all that stuff.
Will you guys ever go back to Portugal?
Oh, 100%. I think like I don't like Porto, Douro Valley, and then like Central, like Bairrada and Coimbra were probably my favorite. Like there were some cool things down in around Lisbon, but I found Lisbon itself like kind of meh compared to Porto and the north. But I definitely want to go back and like spend more time in Porto. We were there 3 weeks and like started Porto, rented cars and like kind of zigzagged and flew out of Lisbon. But that means that I also I don't know, Evora and like the south east was also really great, like by the Spanish border. That's what there were wineries there that were doing like some of the crazy clay amphora aging and like some other like interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. I've only ever been to Porto pretty much. So last time I went, I flew through Lisbon and stayed for like literally a day. And I was traveling with a colleague, like a work colleague. He's a really nice guy. I think he thought, I mean, he worked with me a long time. I'm sure he already thought I was crazy, but I think in Lisbon, he was like, what the fuck is going on? Because I was like, okay, we have like 16 hours. So we're going to like land in the morning and like, you know, you can do whatever I was like, you can do whatever you want. Like, there's no requirement to hang with me, but like, I'm going to go do like these things. I didn't have like a real plan, but I was like, I'm going to go like look for these things. We like looked for every place we could drink wine, including at like 12:30. We've been awake, like, you know, we flew overnight. I'm like, there's a winery up the hill that I heard is a good like local wine bar, and it's only like a 20-minute walk, like straight up this hill. He's like, oh, okay. So we're like walking. It's like they're like, we're closing. I'm like, can we still drink? They're like, yeah, of course. Like we're just closing. Like, you can keep drinking. I'm like, great.
Like, what part of Europe do you think you're in? Like, of course you can keep drinking. Yeah.
Well, sometimes they're like, we don't focus on service. Like you can fuck right off. Like, but these guys were really cool. So I was like, I think it was because I was like, we walked up the hill because we heard you guys had great Portuguese wine. Like, do you have anything? They're like, yeah, we do. Like, we've got good stuff. So yeah, it's just Porto is great, but I've never been to the Douro Valley. I've never been around any wine producing region at all. Just Porto. And
Yeah.
Porto's cool because if you go to even like the port houses, and by the way, I found my last trip, I found a new port house, which is actually a new port house. They've been farming and producing wine for like 75 or no, more than 100 years. They have vintages going back like 75 years, but they're not allowed to bottle them as vintage port because they weren't a declared port house. You could have been everything that a port house is for the last 100 years, and you're only allowed to have a vintage that is from when you were a declared port house. So they had sold their wine to other producers that got bottled as like, you know, Taylor, Ware, like whatever. That place was awesome. But then a lot of these places will bring in their like non-fortified wines, like Quinta de Noval is like, this is a Syrah that we make. And I was like, what? You guys make a Syrah on the Douro Valley? Like, yeah, it's like a project. I was like, okay. So you get cool wine, but I've never been to the site of the production, and I've never seen any of like, you know, any vineyard up close. Like it's a serious bucket list item. I've been there like 6 times and I've never gotten to do it.
It was a great, like, and not like everyone was like, hire a driver, don't try to fuck around, like get like the guide, like, and it was so worth it. Like we did 4, and you know, like, and yeah, one of the places we stopped at was Quinto in Metodo, like, and it was like a couple months after we'd had the Portuguese month, so it was like so fresh in our mind. We just got to like, we hung out there. I don't remember if we had lunch there or if we had lunch the place before, but it was like, you know, just hanging out with the like winemaker who had like been like hosting the tank. Like we just showed up, and yeah, like it was cool to see the spectrum of like places that were rustic and like very chill, and then there was the like, this guy made his money in such and such and like has this very fancy stainless steel spotless, like they're making cool stuff, but it's like very about the visitor center or like the user experience. And then there's the like guy who's just like, you know, hosing out the the stone tank and eating his lunch, and is like, "Oh, you want to try some wines?" and like pulls it out. But yeah, no. Yeah, I feel
That's
like
awesome.
Coastal Valley and Dura
You
Valley
guys sound
are,
like you had a really good
places.
trip.
No, yeah, it was great.
Well, with either one of you, and this invitation goes out to everybody else as well, but I don't think it's possible. But so I'm going to Morocco to do my bike ride in October. One of the people who is coming in October just put out a feeler, or she just announced on the WhatsApp group that we're all in, that she's gonna ride from Porto to Lisbon on her bike, ride down starting in like middle of September, and then ride out to like a Gibraltar, and from there take the ferry over to Morocco, and then meet up with every Marrakesh. I was like, oh my god, that sounds unbelievable. But
That sounds unbelievable.
yeah.
So the coolest part is like that Portugal gets known for a couple regions, right? Like people know Lisbon, people know Porto, people know the Algarve, people know Nazaré because of the surfing.
Yeah.
But that's like, Douro Valley, it's like not most of the country. Like that's a small, like the rest of the country is also amazing, and just nobody knows about it. I mean, people know about it, but like, very few people have gone there.
Rarely people go there. Yeah.
So like the Alentejo is like just outside of Lisbon. It's like horse country, right? It's like going to like, traveling into like Virginia horse country or like Maryland horse country, but like Portuguese. So they have like cool shit and cool wine. And like, it's like, I mean, I just would love to go. That sounds like a dream trip for me to bike across Portugal.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a new bucket. That's like my new goal for my life.
Yeah. I know. When she told me that, I'm like, fuck, do I put everything behind and just make this happen somehow?
Like, I mean, but yeah. Charles,
that's like
were you able to like?
I mean, you could do this.
That's like a month and a half long of what she's planning on doing.
So you could do this. Here's what you could do. You could start in like Galicia, and you could be like, I am doing 6 weeks of on-site, and gosh, when would we start? You'd have to record it, maybe. I don't know. Like the time zone is tough, right? You could be like, I am sitting down with the producer of every wine that we are drinking and doing questions with the producer for the next 6 weeks. And I'm starting in like that little part of Spain, and I'm biking through Portugal, and I'm going to do a like west coast of the Iberian Peninsula.
8:30 in Portugal is like 2:30, if not like 1:30 in the morning over there. So I'm sorry, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time is like 1:30.
Yeah, so if you did any reasonable time on the East Coast after work, it would be too late in Portugal.
Yeah.
The only thing you could do would
be recording. Yeah. But that is kind of cool though, to do it in like 6 weeks.
Or you could do it live,
recording, drop it in like Google Drive, and
you could do it live on Saturday, where you would be drinking with them at say 4:30, and it would be 10:30 a.m. US time, and then you could also record it, and people could just watch it like the following Friday.
Yeah. That's
but I mean, that would actually be pretty cool.
That's kind of cool. That's actually kind of cool.
I'm never opposed to a return to Portugal for wine.
Yeah,
you were like, that's this is month 3 of Portugal. I'd be like, cool, sign me up.
Yeah. Starting
it's gonna be like a month. It's gonna be a month and a half of Portugal.
You could frame it as a like reverse, like the way, like starting in Santiago de Compostela and like pilgrimaging from there to wine. But yeah,
I mean, this is actually a pretty good idea for the wine club. Like, it'd be pretty cool to do that.
That is cool. Let me think about it.
Okay, so man, you got a lot of good Spain in there too. If you wanted to start a little bit in Spain, you got some fucking baller Spanish wine in that little area 100%. Too.
Yeah, has there been a Albarino month or a part of Spain month? Because I know we've done other like
you missed it, right? Like it was like a few months before you came in, we did a Galicia month. Yeah. I mean, talk about like rip your gum out, melt your
Yeah.
enamel acid wines. Like that was
Well,
that
we
one.
didn't really drink any Albarino.
We had one Albarino.
I had one.
Yeah, but like we could have had like 70.
Yeah, it's like the Lambrusco month. It's just like Albarino. Like fuck Alicia, just do Albarino.
Yeah, you
One-
should just do an Albarino month and call it crisp and juicy and just
Yeah.
be like, here we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go visit your dentist after this month.
Well, one of the cooler like spirits I've discovered recently is the like Galicia's version of Pomace brandy is Arujo that is like like typically Pomace brandy made from Albarino Pomace, and so it was a Dufour vineyard or winery. I don't know. They had this, and I picked it up at like MacArthur's Beverages, but it was like a single plot Albarino, like all the vine. It was pre-phylloxera. It was like it was very interesting to taste the like a spirit and get the same sort of like terroir and notes that you get from the wine. And like I didn't pick up or get the wine, but to taste the two back to back would be interesting because I feel like that often doesn't travel through distillation when you go from like a fermented wine to a distilled spirit. But yeah, anyway.
Huh. All right.
I know. I know I've been talking up like French Pomace brandy and stuff to you, and like Marta Bourbon, and you're like you'll stick with the Burgundian wine and not the funky Pomace brandy, but.
Yo, in terms of brandy, I'm a big fan of brandy de Jerez. I love that like a sherry note brandy that they make on there. It's delicious. Awesome. That like rancio note brandy. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Anyways. Well, I should probably go because my folks are still up. So I'm gonna go and try to hang out with niece and nephew before they go to bed. But thank you for that fucking brilliant idea, by the way, Charles. And thank you for bringing that Portugal idea, Chris. And then I'm gonna think about it. Let's see if I can pull it together. That'd be cool, actually. That'd be super cool.
That'd be fucking super cool. Hey, just real quick question: are you drinking anything or going anywhere cool in Sonoma while you're there?
So, you might have missed this at the beginning. I was talking to Julia about it. It's like all the wineries that I contacted to possibly visiting, it seems like they're like actively kid unfriendly. So like not meaning like they're not like I don't want fucking kids in here, but it's more like they're like in a warehouse or like they're not ready to like receive kids per se. I may go visit Ant Hill Farm tomorrow. I've never visited them. So I may go hit up Ant Hill Farm, but outside of that, it's just like I don't know. If I'm gonna go there in the afternoon with the niece and nephew, we need like a swimming pool, fucking playground, or some shit. And it's like places like Francis Coppola. You're like, ah, fuck,
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Have you ever been to Scolian Project's little fucking garage public storage unit?
No, never been. I've never been to LA for like proper like a wine trip, and I would love.
I feel like that's like the new thing is like what those guys are doing down there is like everybody's like, yeah, we got like a U-Haul locker. We're making wine in there. It's like
100%. 100%. I mean, it's badass. I love it, but yeah, it's totally such a like a garagist like a project. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you should make a wine label called Public Storage East. And you'll just make it literally, you'll rent like a cube or like, you're like, we're making wine in here, baby.
Yeah.
It is not temperature controlled.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing is temperature controlled.
Actually, the funny thing is that the public storage actually is temperature controlled.
Yeah.
So all right, well, hey, have fun with the family.
Are you gonna fly through SFO and stop at Donkey and Goat on your way back? Bring Marty.
I was actually just in Berkeley like a couple of days ago, but we didn't go to a winery. We just went to a brewery that's literally like 2 blocks away from Donkey and Goat and 1 block away from Brock. But nice. I was with a bunch of bunch of college buddies. So we and their kids. So like we went to a brewery with a big like a warehouse space, so like kids can run around and shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you guys probably understand it now, but like now, like when I meet up with my friends, it's no longer just meeting up with friends. It's like all the kids come out, so like we gotta have the fucking kid space, and just like you can't just go to like a cool space anymore. You gotta go. It's gotta be a cool space with a kid space.
You need like a bar that serves good booze around like a sandbox Thunderdome, and like
Yeah.
that's up. You know, just let the kids go crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always say like these wineries, they should rent like a little bouncy castle and just put it outside, and then it'd be great. Like let the kids fucking run.
Not that expensive.
Yeah, so like do that.
It's probably in the U.S. It's probably a liability issue.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But
So, well, hey,
anyway,
have fun.
well, there. Good to see you guys. I'll see you guys next week. Back in DC.